Welcome back to the Diver Guide channel, and today we are finally talking about reverse 2.5 tuck. It's a big dive, and it's the first dive we're talking about that has a 3.0 difficulty on 1 meter at least, and I'm super excited for it because there's a lot to say. This is a very complex dive, it's really hard to master, and doing your first one can be a big deal. So I'm gonna walk you through some do's and don'ts for this, and please be sure to check out the reverse 1.5 tuck video I have. That's gonna talk a lot about the takeoff that you're gonna need for the reverse 2.5 as well. And a lot of people have this desire to rush their progression when really it's a lot better for your long-term growth to really focus in on the basics and dial in these takeoffs for your reverse 1.5 and get really solid reverse doubles. I'm not gonna talk about reverse double too much, but some quick things that you need to know are that you need to treat your come out like you're kicking out of a reverse 2.5. You need to be sharp because you see it all the time. It's common for people to just do their lead ups in a more lazy way. And then when they go to finally do the optional, they have a hard time committing to the out and they end up throwing their head back, looking for the water, being all frantic, when really this can be a dialed in kick out that you can practice on the double. So do that, and let's go over some examples that show you some common mistakes and how to master it. Okay, so let's start up on 3 meter a little bit. And I threw this one in here just because even though it's a failed dive and it looks really painful, there's a lot that we can learn from this video. First of all, if you haven't seen my video already on the hurdle, I have a 3-part series that talks about how to do a better hurdle. And you can see here she swings her foot through really far, which is not the best thing to do. It's really better to keep your foot in closer to the leg that's planted. She does get to the end of the board pretty well, but as she comes through for that last swing, you can see some things go wrong. At this point, when you're trying to learn reverse 2.5, you should have a better ability to swing the arms through without affecting the shoulders as much. Once she gets to about 2 o'clock or maybe 1 o'clock with the arms, the shoulders start rolling with her, and she doesn't get that full extension with the arms past the ears. That, coupled with leaving the board early and the knees going forward, makes this a really slow takeoff and a low takeoff. She gets into a pretty big tuck, which is going to make her spin slow as well, and then she comes out early, of course, and that's going to leave a mark. Similarly, with this person, they also swing their foot a lot as they come through for the hurdle. And again, having a solid hurdle is something you can practice all the time, and it's only going to make your dives better. What this person does better than the first person we went over is they get their arms through a lot better on the takeoff. This gives the legs a clear spot to jump up into, and she looks into the tuck a lot better, even though her head is still up pretty high in the tuck. As she comes around to vertical, she's just kind of surviving the kick out, hoping for the best, and that's probably because it's a new dive, and that's what it's going to feel like and look like in the beginning. I highly recommend practicing the reverse double on 1 meter and reverse 1.5 on 1 meter. Eventually, you'll be able to relax on the takeoff up on 3 meter or when you're doing your 2.5 on 1 meter and treat the reverse 2.5 just like it's a double. A super common mistake you'll see is people rushing the takeoff, just like in this video. As the board's coming up, they're already lifting their legs up into the tuck. And before the board even passes horizontal, they're already thinking about getting into that tuck as fast as possible. And really what you have to think about is getting that full extension, feeling the full push before you slam up into the tuck. Another common mistake that you'll see is just balance. And this is going to be something that you'll practice and struggle with throughout your entire diving career. Diving is like 95% balance because the board amplifies anything that you do. If you're slightly over the end, it's going to push you out super far. And if you're back, it's going to stand you up as well, depending on how you move it on your takeoff. This person's leaning forward, and you can see that because as they're coming off the board, you can see them leaning slightly. And as they leave the board, they still do a good job looking up into the tuck, which is going to be a big theme with this. The more that you can look into the tuck and think about driving up through the knees to get this rotation started, the faster your flip speed will be because it allows your legs to come all the way up and get into a smaller tuck, which is one of the biggest drivers of flip speed. Now back to 3 meter, this person's actually been practicing this dive a little bit longer and they're making it around, albeit it's finishing a little bit low still. Now, everybody's going to have different inconsistencies. For example, this person has a great arm swing getting all the way through, but they're falling forward on this dive and their head goes back on the takeoff. And that's why it's super important to think about the reverse 1.5 and the reverse double and making sure that you can check all the boxes. Are you looking into the tuck on the takeoff? Are you getting that full extension all the way through the legs with the hips pushing slightly out on the takeoff and not cutting through the knees on the takeoff? Are you getting your arms all the way up and getting that last pop to throw into this dive, which we'll get to a little bit later with the more advanced divers? But these are all the things that you have to be thinking about on your lead-ups. This all starts way earlier than when you do your first reverse 2.5. All of these habits are being stacked for years and years and years as you get better and better to be able to do the 2.5. But it all starts with really the reverse dive. And for all the coaches out there, this is a super important part of diving that I see some people mess up, from my perspective at least. There are coaches out there that really just practice their optionals, and they don't have their divers do drills and lead-ups and practice the fundamentals enough. I think that will help divers be comfortable with doing their optionals, but I do not think that it will help their long-term growth, because in order to master something, you have to get all of the components perfect. When you practice just your optional over and over again, yeah, you get used to doing it and maybe the fear level comes down with it, but you don't get to single out a specific part of the dive and work on one technique at a time to really integrate it into the dives that you're trying to learn. And I see that mistake a lot. So I would urge you to develop practices that have drills specific to what each diver needs in order to progress them a lot faster. Okay, this is another very important bit. Once you get to these more advanced dives, you have to be stronger as well. Yes, usually as you're growing, you're getting better at these dives if you're a kid, and you'll naturally be getting stronger because of that. But developing your core and hip flexors in a way that helps you absorb the board impact and all the force that the board is pushing into you as it pushes you back up into the air. And if you don't have the core strength to be able to keep a hollow position on the takeoff, it's not going to literally break you, but it's going to make you break at your hips and put you in a weak position. Like in this dive, where this person, as they swing through, they just immediately go belly out. And while it does get the hips to move out, there's a difference between the hips moving out and the belly moving out. And when I think about belly moving out, that means that the core is not engaged, because to me, the belly is up and it feels more soft. But when you think hips out, the hips are tucked in, the core is engaged, and the hips push out, not the belly. I hope that makes sense. And now, once you've been doing this dive long enough, you'll start to get more comfortable with it, and this video represents that. This person gets all the way to the end of the board, which means they're gonna get all of the jump. Their arms get all the way back to a really nice extended position, and the legs shoot up into the arms. And now we're introducing spotting a lot more too, because you can only think about so much at a time. When you're learning this dive, it's really just about surviving and getting it off the board, because there's usually so much fear involved. But as you get used to it more, you can start to think about other things. I'm not going to touch on the tower takeoffs for this right now, but in the future I may do a video on it. I just wanted to include this video because it's awesome, and to represent that we're moving into the more advanced level. At this stage, the starts are starting to look a little bit easier for people. They're able to kick out and have time to get their arms all the way out for the entry, and generally they're just finishing the dive a lot better. And at this point, I'd like to point out that there's different ways of getting into the tuck. When you're doing these dives, and this also happens with pike as well, some people will circle around a little bit more with their arms, and others will kind of throw back into the tuck. And it all depends on your preference and probably what's best for your body type. I'll leave that up to you and your coach to figure that out, whatever feels more natural, or maybe whatever looks better for you. But there is no one-size-fits-all approach to this. And that's represented by this video with this person doing no arm circle, probably as a drill, which really touches on one of the last parts of being really good at this dive, which is the pop off the board. Once you have a good understanding of finishing the jump, pushing out with the hips well, looking into the tuck really well, so you're hollow coming off the board at the hips, driving into a nice tight tuck, you can really start to develop your throw. Right now I'm putting air quotes on that, throw, because it's not like a front or inward where you're throwing past your eyes, but on a back and reverse, there's a little bit of an extension at the end of the takeoff to help that final push off the board and driving into the tuck position. This video has a little bit more of a pronounced throw motion. You can see they come through, their hips initiate the takeoff, and then their knees drive up. They look hollow as the legs come up, and notice how their head hasn't changed position until the legs come all the way up. They're looking forward, waiting for the legs to come up, and they're throwing. Their arms are coming forward to attack the tuck, grab the legs, and pull in tighter. They obviously finish extremely high and kick out really early. And here's another example of that as well. They get a really nice extension coming down for that last jump. The arms come through perfectly. Think about the timing of this arm circle. They've already started to fall, and then their arms start coming through. And before the board even starts coming up again, their arms are already up by their face, not quite to their ears yet. But that one skill of being able to get the arms through cleanly and without moving their shoulders at all is super important. If you can just get that one skill earlier and not feel like you're muscling through the dive with your shoulders, you're gonna progress at this dive so much faster than everybody else. Anyways, they do an even better job getting hollow into the tuck, but they also pop off the board. You can see that final extension, the elbows come in a little bit bent, and then they straighten out as they move forward slightly and the legs come up to meet them. And then once again, they spot so well, and this dive is so much easier for them that they can just kick out super strong, reach back, and drill the entry. This is one of those dives that just takes a lot of practice. Every takeoff is different with this dive, and it takes a long time to even get to a point where you're getting consistent takeoffs with this, but it all goes back to the reverse 1.5 and the reverse double. One strategy that I liked for myself and that I also teach my divers is to flip-flop their dives. So as they go through a reverse progression, or really any optional progression, it helps to do lead up, optional, lead up, optional. Go back and forth so that you can feel the smooth takeoff of the lead up and also build that muscle memory of the strong kick out. By sandwiching your optional with the lead ups, it can help bring that muscle memory into the optional and hopefully make the dive better. If you're ever struggling with the fear of this dive, I totally get it. This is a big dive and it can feel really scary. I would always hate hitting the back of my shoulders on the water, or maybe hitting the back of my head on the water too hard. You're not quite making it in the beginning when you're learning this dive. And it's so counterintuitive because the more you relax on the takeoff, the easier this dive becomes. And that's what makes this sport so good. It forces you to relax in super uncomfortable positions, and that's gonna make you a better diver long term, and it's also gonna make you a better individual and person for the rest of your life. If you're able to relax your nervous system and slow down your breathing before you start something that you know is hard to do and that you are actually nervous for, you're building one extremely strong ability, and that's what it's all about. So good luck. I hope this video helps. If you have any questions, check out my website. You can contact me there. And if you need any help with your specific dives, go ahead and send them in. There will be a link for that down below. It does cost $5, and that's only because I put a lot of time into these. So if that sounds interesting to you, go ahead and check it out below. If not, I hope you enjoy all the free content, and thanks for watching. Catch you on the next one. Bye.